We've all been there before. You've been sitting at work or school, dreaming up an amazing game idea. It's finally time. You're gonna make that dream game come true. You sit down at your computer, open up a YouTube tutorial series for your engine of choice, and start dual-wielding your attention span throughout episodes of basic character movement, UI coding, and making assets. It's happening! Your dream game is gonna become real. You just finished coding the beginnings of the main gameplay loop, finally accomplishing the first step of growing past tutorials. The future is a blank canvas, and your game will only continue to grow and become fully realized. And then, nothing. 1 month passes. 2 months. You've wanted to get started on that next system for a while. After all, those enemies won't code themselves. You sat down to do it one afternoon, but the hitbox systems were confusing, and you didn't understand how the collision layers worked. The reluctancy to tackle it has been floating in the back of your mind for a few weeks, dissuading you from continuing on the project. Well, maybe I just need to get some experience first with other stuff. How about loading a different room? At first it seems to go well, but why is the player spawning there? How do I get back? Why is the screen transition not functioning correctly? The game is crashing now? Oh, it's because I coded it with this object at its center. I'll just place this object in every room. I'll fix it, I will. I just have to get more experienced first. I'll learn as I make my dream game, and I'll be able to fix it. More months pass. The game fades into the back of your mind as you become distracted with life, friends, leisure. Every time you think about the game, you feel a bit guilty, but it couldn't be helped, right? You aren't experienced enough, you aren't ready for this. Instead of questioning yourself, well, how will I be? Your mind just answers for you. It'll happen eventually. And then, after a year and a half since you started the project, your hard drive dies, and with it, the dreams you had for that awesome game. What I just described is my first ever game project experience I started when I was 13 years old. It was going to be called Splash Master. Yes, in hindsight, very, very, very poor choice for the name of a game, but I was a little too innocent. The game would have been an RPG where you used formations of water to attack your enemies, with the twist being that battles were split between action RPG and turn-based combat. Enemy attack patterns would spawn these things called opportunities on the ground between a bullet of mazes, and reaching a set opportunity would allow you to execute moves that affect different areas of the battlefield, depending on where the enemies were. And if the battle was going poorly, water bending could quite literally take blood, sweat, and tears to boost your power. Even saying it out loud now, I remember how enthusiastic I was about these elements being in a game. The initial prototype had a few areas, as well as a basic combat system that had no stats or attacks, but you could run, jump, deflect, and even block attacks. Unfortunately, the hard drive part of the story was very much true. I don't have any remaining footage of the project, but there wasn't much there anyways. Entering high school, I would occasionally cook up a new game idea, a broad, grand one that would get a short start, but ultimately never see the light of day. From there, I got into ROM hacking Mario 64, and game creation took a backseat priority-wise for me until recently. Long-winded backstory, I know, but it's giving context to my experience with abandoning game projects. I've done it. Anyone that has ever made a game has definitely done it. So, why? Why do almost all aspiring game developers have this common experience? And how many games lurk in the depths of the abandoned project graveyard that ever needs more acres? Did you know people learn new things? In case you didn't know this and are a potted plant, learning things is difficult. People want to learn new things all the time. I know you guys always said you would use that 3D printer you bought on a whim, but that thing is still collecting dust after 1 week of using it. Don't lie to me. Every hobby has this problem, but it's disproportionately large when it comes to game development. So why? Well, video games tend to steal the lunch of every other form of artistic media out there. To make a competent game, you need character art, environment design, graphic UI design, sound design, music, gameplay design, enemy design, storyboarding, in some cases voice acting, and not to mention the poor programmer that has to tie it all together. Did hearing that list demotivate you? If it did, congratulations. You now know what fresh game creators discover on their first go of it. Making a game is daunting, a Herculean task that only the most insane of individuals can tackle on their own. Especially when many people that learn an art form are only specialized to do one or two of these facets of game creation. Doing them all is impossible, surely, and yet indie games continue to be released. How did they do it and not me? The problem lies in the learning curve. Everybody wants to be a Toby Fox or a Scott Cawthon where they can hit it big off their big dream game series. Except neither of these people started with Undertale or FNAF. Scott Cawthon in particular has a treasure trove of terrible games, animations, and art that people oftentimes gloss over when reviewing his resume. So my main advice for this issue is to start small. Game jams are incredible at teaching you so much in such a small amount of time with nothing but benefit. The project is low stakes, and there's no issue with poorly implementing features since it's only for the jam. Falling flat on your face and not being able to create something you wanted to in time sucks. But it's so valuable for learning your own strengths and limits, and can teach you a lot about your big game idea. But I'm sure you've heard all the tired advice of start small and work your way up to that big game. Oftentimes though, we tend to ignore this because, oh, well, I could just learn while making my big game. I have so much motivation and free time as well. But, and I'll just say this to get to the next topic, motivation alone is never enough for a project. Time never waits. It delivers all equally to the same failed indie game project. We've all got things going on in our life. Work, school, hobbies, friends, all that stuff. Making an indie game is a commitment. And generally it's hard to sacrifice the other stuff we want to do in life to work on it. At the start it's easy because motivation carries the want to create a game above everything else in your life. Making a game and learning is so much fun and a great use of your time, until it isn't. Until that one hiccup turns into many roadblocks, and the motivation runs completely dry. Then what you have left is the option of either struggling to work on your game, or hopping on a call with your friends for another run of Splunky. What I'm trying to get at here is that motivation can only take you so far in a project, maybe up to 30% completion. The other 70%? Discipline. It sounds so lame, boring, and preachy, but to succeed on finishing a game development project, or really any long-term project, you need to discipline yourself into a routine that works for you. I learned this the hard way when I had ambitions to create a major Mario 64 hack all the way back in 2021. My motivation was quote-unquote limitless, and it carried me throughout part of the first course and the first ability, until it became time to design some platforming. And then, to no surprise, the project was abandoned for a full year, until I picked it up again in mid-2022. That project is the Patchmaker's Workshop, by the way, a fully finished and realized 120-star major hack that I did end up completing. So what changed for me other than discipline? Well, to get back to that first, I knew more about ROM hacking the game going back into the project. Since the mountains of learning needed to create certain parts of the hack had been tackled by a few other projects I did in the meantime, they became more like hills that were easier to climb over. A lot of what I needed to do now felt more like flexing a muscle rather than reinventing the wheel. Through experience and practice, the grunt work of it all became like second nature to me. And it became more about allotting time to the project than it did struggling to create it. That, in of itself, though, is also a sacrifice. And when you keep making that sacrifice, it can lead to burnout. Is something we've all felt before on many parts of our lives, and game development burnout is no different. It sucks. It feels awful. It makes every part of your game seem ever more impossible to create. And the worst part is how seemingly randomly it pops up. I can be working on my game for 6 hours and feel great by the end, or I can sit down, do one 5-minute task, and feel like the weight of the world is compressing my frontal lobe. It always seems to hit at the worst of times, and forcing yourself to work through it almost never helps, and can often leave you worse off. Burnout is the murderer of 40% completed projects, and is probably the biggest source of hobby destruction. So how do we address burnout? Well, it depends. I'm no expert on prevention or treatment of burnout, as I often face it myself. I can, however, share a few tips that have helped me overcome it in the past. Tip 1, which is what everyone says, is to mix up your free time. Devoting so much time to game development, while a good strategy for getting a finished product, may not leave you in the best mental position. Go for a walk, hang out with friends, family, or your dog. Go pick up that 3D printer again. Just make sure to mix up what you're doing if you feel the onset of burnout ever approaching. This can be hard to do if the burnout comes from work or school though, so if you're committed to getting game work done through the burnout, there are a few things that help. Tip 2 is to multitask. I know this sounds very counterproductive, but hear me out. Throw on a video essay on your second screen while working on your game. I did this for a few sessions when facing some heavy burnout, and it worked wonders. Sure, it definitely was not the most efficient development I've ever had, but it helped me work through the burnout while not being absolutely miserable. It also, ironically, distracted me from other distractions, which is weird, but always a bonus. Tip number 3 is to mix up the work itself. Game development, luckily, has so much work required that you can easily change what you're working on at any given moment. Tired of doing pause menu code? Go work on the level design for a bit. Stuck up on that one song? Go start a different one. Giving some time to rest and recharge on each piece of the ever-growing puzzle can really prove to curb burnout. Those are just a few tips though. Find out what works best for you, and be aware of when you feel distracted or when you're about to burn out. Being self-aware of things like this is key to finishing. These are only some of the reasons your project is lying in the minds of last opened 8 months ago, but they are some of the most relevant ones. Truthfully, motivation to create is difficult, complex, and not something you could just explain. That's why when motivation fails, you need to rely on discipline to pick up its slack. You have the potential to create that dream game. We all do. Game development, like all pursuits, is a journey. Hell, I've barely started my journey. I'm only just now working on my first commercial project, Crokespire, after all. But, and this may be hard to hear, the reason your projects are abandoned is you. Not because you're incapable, not because you can't be motivated. Motivation is a choice, and the reason you've abandoned those projects is because you have not made that choice yet. And it may seem difficult, impossible to ever imagine motivating yourself to work while in the deepest pits of despair and burnout from everything else. But you're overcomplicating things. The only person that can make your dream game a reality is you, because it's your dream. And it's simple. You need to choose to pursue it. Whether that be through the advice in this video, or learning through your own journey. The path to that dream is one that differs between people. It's a path I'm still walking myself, and even I don't know where the end is. But every struggle I've described is one I've personally faced along the way, and the resolution is the result I came to. There may be dozens of additional pain points I have yet to experience that afflict aspiring developers, who knows? But all you need to do is take that first step, that choice, to stop waiting for motivation to hit you, and start creating it yourself. Thank you for watching, and I hope you can glean something useful from this video, even if it was a pretty personal experience. Even if you aren't an aspiring game developer, I think these tips are pretty universal for any hobby in life. If you want to support the channel, consider subscribing and checking out my game Crokespire on Steam. The link to that will be in the description. Let me know your personal experiences and tips in the comments. I'm curious to see how your game development stories have gone until now. Until then.